Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to each and every one of you. I'm Elson Floyd. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to serve as your moderator this morning. This has indeed been a very stimulating and exciting conference. This session will be no exception as we begin to think about ways in which we as four-year institutions and two-year institutions, both public and private, can collaborate with the Peace Corps in ways in which we have always done, and ways in which will serve as a foundation as we move forward. I'm so glad to have each and every one of you join us in what is arguably one of the largest educational enterprises in the world, that is public universities and the Peace Corps. It is an honor to share the stage with our panel today, and now I will introduce them to each of you. As all of you know, Peter McPherson is the president of APLU and is doing an amazing job leading this organization. He is also the former chair of the board of directors of Dow Jones and Company. Peter has a very strong passion for and a very active role in international affairs as well. He is the founding co-chair of Partnership to Cut Hunger and Poverty in Africa and chair of the board of IFDC, an international center dealing with soil and agricultural development. He also serves as chair of the board of Harvest Plus, an organization working on breeding crops for better nutrition. And recently, Peter completed the chairmanship of a commission created by Congress to consider ways to greatly increase the number of students who study abroad. It's been a great pleasure for me to have come to know Peter over 2 decades. We both served as presidents in Michigan at the same time, and I learned quite a bit from him, not only in terms of running a university, but also the interface that must and should occur with international engagement. It's a great joy being with him. One small fact, which you may not know, is that Peter also served as a member of the Peace Corps in 1963. The other panelist is Brady Deaton. Brady and I have developed a very strong relationship and friendship over the decades. You see, he served as chancellor for the University of Missouri at the time in which I was serving as president. He comes with an impeccable record and has provided just unparalleled leadership for Mizzou. He holds a master's degree in diplomacy, international commerce, and agricultural economics, and a PhD in agricultural economics as well. His unique perspective here today is that he too is a former member of the Peace Corps. He served 2 years in Thailand, and he also did some stint in Ecuador as well. And finally, it's my great pleasure to introduce Carrie Hessler-Radelet, the new director of the Peace Corps. Carrie has held her current position since June of this year, but she's been involved in the Peace Corps and international work for most of her career. She served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Western Somalia in 1981 to 1983. She returned as deputy director in 2010 after more than two decades of experience in public health focused on HIV/AIDS and maternal and child health. Since 2010, she has spearheaded a comprehensive assessment and reform effort for the Peace Corps to improve both the efficacy and efficiency of its programs. She has also led the implementation of new policies and processes to improve the health and safety of Peace Corps volunteers. Kerry has been instrumental in instituting the new Office of Global Health and HIV to expand and strengthen the Peace Corps' HIV education and prevention programs and global health service partnerships to send doctors and nurses to teach in developing countries. She will share with you her thoughts on this topic today, and discussion will ensue. Just a little known fact, she represents four decades, 4 generations of individuals who've been focused on the Peace Corps. Her aunt served in the Peace Corps from 1964 to 1966. She was the 10,000th volunteer in Turkey. Her grandparents were in the Peace Corps from 1972 to 1973. Their work was out of Malaysia. And her nephew just finished some work in Mozambique. He was there from 2007 to 2009. Carrie, thank you very much for what you do. It's a great joy to have you here this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. I'm just going to move this up a little. There we go. Well, the idea for this panel actually originated in the cereal aisle of the Giant supermarket where Peter and I met one day. We both live in McLean, Virginia, and had this idea that it would be a wonderful opportunity for the Peace Corps to come and speak at your APLU conference, and we're so delighted to be here. Dr. Floyd, thank you so much for your lifelong commitment to Peace Corps in all of your various roles.
Thank you very much.
And I'm very deeply grateful also to Brady and looking forward to this panel. I hope you're all well rested. My colleague Alison Snell last night was walking to her room in the hotel when she encountered an armadillo. Now we were commenting that if she had been in her Peace Corps country of Guatemala, that would have been dinner. So anyway, I can't think of a more important forum for us to discuss partnership with the Peace Corps. As engines of opportunity and catalysts of innovation, your institutions have left an indelible legacy, not only among generations of graduates, but really the whole narrative of our nation. And in a knowledge-based global economy, our country's future will continue to be shaped and transformed by your institutions. From our vantage point at Peace Corps, we couldn't have a more important partnership than with the public and land-grant universities. And that has been true throughout the course of our more than 50-year history. In 1960, then Senator John F. Kennedy made a late-night stop in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He thought he was going to sneak off to bed. But what he found instead were 5,000 students that had been waiting for up to 10 or 12 hours to hear him speak. So he had no alternative than to give them a little speech. He really, I think, had no idea what he was going to say since he had not been planning on giving a speech. But he spontaneously engaged the crowd, challenging them to serve their country by serving the cause of peace in developing countries. And the crowd went wild, and Senator Kennedy knew that he was on to something. So less than 1 year, actually it was less than 6 months later, President Kennedy entered office and signed an executive order establishing the Peace Corps. And in that inaugural year, among the earliest groups of volunteers to step up and volunteer for a brand new program that was unlike any that had ever been conceived before, were students from Washington State University, the University of Missouri, Michigan State and the University of Michigan, Florida A&M, the University of Hawaii, the University of Alaska, and dozens of other APLU members. Your universities really were the seed ground for the early days of the Peace Corps, and they continue to be to this day. We remain deeply committed to the ideals of the Peace Corps that were established by John F. Kennedy to promote world peace through community-based development and cross-cultural understanding. But today, our volunteers are using their training, their ingenuity, their technology, and their innovation to save lives and promote community-based development in ways that President Kennedy could never have imagined. And most importantly for this gathering, the Peace Corps wants to continue to work in strong partnership with universities across the nation. We really think that it's a win-win for us both. So let me just tell you a little bit more about that. There are currently 7,000 volunteers working in 66 countries around the world, working on issues ranging from empowering girls and women to protecting the planet for future generations to fighting disease in communities across the globe. Our world is more interconnected than ever before, and no one sees that more deeply than all of you. Tackling these challenges requires a scientific, modern, evidence-based approach. That's why 4 years ago, and you heard from Dr. Floyd, Peace Corps initiated the most radical reform effort it had ever undertaken in our 53-year history. And we're doing it in collaboration with universities across the country. We are committed to improving the quality of our technical training and program support for volunteers by focusing on a few highly effective technical interventions that have proven through evidence to be most effective at achieving development impact and reducing poverty in the nations that we serve. Our reform effort also includes a rigorous commitment to monitoring and evaluation. As part of this effort in each of our 6 sectors, we have created core training curriculum that is adapted to local needs with the input of some of our world's leading experts. Peace Corps has worked in partnership with a number of universities that are members of APLU. to help us create high-quality, consistent training and tools that will help us and help our volunteers to be successful in the field. The goal is to provide our trainees and volunteers with the skills to build capacity among their host communities and establish a standard of quality and comparability between our country programs. We've also been working to leverage technology to expand access to expert training and create an online community of practice and learning where volunteers, experts, many of which are from your universities, and returned Peace Corps volunteers can share best practices and help each other succeed. So you already help to prepare our volunteers to be successful at their technical work. And we hope to have to play an even more important role with you in the future in this area. But we also work alongside of you on some of your field-based projects in the field. Peace Corps volunteers, as you know, specialize in meeting the needs of communities at the last mile. Volunteers live and work as members of our communities, mostly rural, throughout the world. Volunteers integrate completely into their communities. They learn to speak local languages, and in fact, we teach 250 different languages. They learn to understand local culture, they eat the same food, and they live in the same kind of houses as their neighbors. When they arrive in their communities, we encourage Peace Corps volunteers to spend time getting to know their community members, meeting with local leaders, and beginning to work with their counterparts, listening to them, developing relationships with them, building trust. This way, they begin to understand deeply and profoundly the constraints to and opportunities for development, to see the community's needs through their own eyes, to see who the change agents are in their community and identify what motivates them to make change. As part of our new technical strategy, Peace Corps is creating partnerships with universities, NGOs, governments, and donors. By working at the last mile with partners like you, volunteers are able to mobilize your key populations, to maximize the impact of your development investments at the community level and make sure that they are implemented effectively, owned by the community, monitored and evaluated, and sustained over time. We help partners, including our university partners, achieve their community level results by working in a close alignment with them. I want to give you an example of the kind of partnership our volunteers are able to deliver in collaboration with other partners. I want to tell you about Ian Hennessy, who is a community health volunteer in Kédougou, Senegal. Ian Kédougou is the area of southeastern Senegal which is the highest malaria prevalence in Senegal. And as part of the President's Malaria Initiative, Ian was part of a larger effort to distribute bed nets, one bed net for every sleeping space in his particular region. So he did that in partnership with PMI. He was helped in this endeavor by Sheikh, who was his best friend and fellow community health worker. They lived next door to each other, and every day Ian would go over to Sheikh's house and have dinner with his family and play with Sheikh's 4-year-old niece named Jenaba. One day Jenaba got very, very sick, and 3 days later she died of cerebral malaria. They were devastated. How could this have happened? Sheikh was the head of the community health team. They slept under bed nets. How did it happen? Well, they knew how it happened. It happened because malaria is not treated in that part of Senegal unless people are at death's door. So people just learn to live with malaria. In addition, many people, because they have had malaria year after year, actually are asymptomatic. So they may actually carry malaria but not have any symptoms whatsoever, but they are able to transmit malaria to their neighbors, including young Jenaba. So Ian and Sheikh put their heads together. Actually, Ian reached out to his university, which is Emory University, and they came up with an idea for something that they called proactive case detection. It was a plan to go house to house once a week to see if there was anybody in that household who exhibited signs and symptoms of malaria, fever, headaches, nausea, etc. If they were, they tested that person. If they were positive, they treated them on the spot. Senegal had community-based treatment of malaria at that time. The health workers had already been trained to do that, but they were not proactive about their approach. So this had the community health workers going out proactively to their community. In addition, in order to get those asymptomatic carriers of malaria, not only did they test and treat the person who tested positive, who had symptoms, but they tested family members around them in order to get to that asymptomatic pool. After 3 months, one rainy season, and also I should say that they partnered in this endeavor with the National Malaria Control Program of Senegal, with the Centers for Disease Control that set up a case control study for them, so another village that had equal malaria incidence and bed net coverage rates. And they also, of course, partnered with the President's Malaria Initiative and various university partners. At the end of one rainy season, there was a 90% decrease in malaria incidence. 90% decrease in malaria incidence and no malaria deaths. Well, this was astounding. So the government of Senegal wanted to scale it up to see whether or not this particular methodology, which is very intense, could be successful, feasible with the same efficacy rates at in a larger geographic scale. So working with Sheikh and his team of community health workers, they trained more than 1,000 other community health workers, and with the help of Peace Corps, 17 Peace Corps volunteers were assembled to help expand this program to one district, a whole district, 140 villages. They just completed their study just now at the end of, I think it was the end of August. Same result, 88% decrease in malaria incidence as compared to the control village, and no malaria deaths, and a serious decrease in severe malaria. An incredible result. But it came about because Sheikh and Ian were working together. They identified a serious problem. They were very motivated from a very personal place to find a solution. And they worked with others to find a simple, doable action plan. Their plan was actually born in grief of the loss of Geneba. But through that grief, they were able to save many, many other lives. And that is a great example of what Peace Corps is all about. We help people to identify their own solutions, to expand their horizons, connecting them with new partners, including university partners, and giving them, and the communities especially, the confidence to try new ideas. And in the process, our volunteers' lives are transformed. Ian has now completed his service. He's working at CDC. He's working in the Global Malaria Program right now. And we are scaling up his approach, proactive case detection now, through 3,000 volunteers in 24 countries in sub-Saharan Africa in collaboration with PMI. So it's exciting. Peace Corps is not only life-changing, it is game-changing. It dramatically improves the job competitiveness of our return volunteers, which is a great thing, not only for our volunteers, but also for our universities, your graduates, and also for our nation. Through large-scale partnerships like PMI and like Feed the Future, which is the US government's global food security initiative, and I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of Feed the Future, Peace Corps volunteers are tapping into state-of-the-art research that is being led by universities such as Michigan State, Oregon State, Iowa State, the University of Missouri, University of Georgia, and many more, to transform agricultural practices in the field, from introducing improved seed techniques in Nepal, or more effective plant nutrition in Ethiopia, or sustainable fishing practices in the Philippines. And as an agency, what we've come to understand is that we can achieve the greatest impact by working in alignment with other development partners at the community level. In this global age, in our multicultural nation, our nation needs Americans who can speak other language, understand other perspectives, other cultures, and find common ground with people from all walks of life in countries around the world. Since 1998, the American Council on Education has been vociferously speaking about the importance of fostering a globally competent American citizenry in order to maintain our economic prosperity, our national security, and maintain our place in the world. Frankly, I can't think of a better place to learn those skills than in the Peace Corps. In the process of helping a Tanzanian village adopt solar energy, or mentoring at-risk youth in Cambodia, or launching a mobile health hotline for youth, for teens in Nicaragua, our volunteers are not just making a difference in faraway communities, they are investing in their own futures and in the future of our nation. That's why we are revitalizing recruitment and selection and outreach to engage with new applicants in a way that we never have before. Starting this summer, we implemented sweeping changes to our recruitment and selection process, making it simpler, faster, and more personalized than ever before for your students to apply to the Peace Corps. Now your students can apply to specific countries of service and job assignments that are best for them, which means that they can choose to serve in a particular country or to do a particular job or to leave at a particular time. So if they want to do public health or they want to do agriculture, if they want to do community economic development, they can do it. It's all there on our website. It's all very transparent. I think about volunteers like Jasmine Allen, who received her bachelor's and master's degree from Tuskegee University in animal science and agricultural and resource economics. She wrote her thesis on meat-goat economics, a thesis which, frankly, she understands far better than I do. But she found an opportunity to use that as an agribusiness volunteer in Malawi. There, as part of Feed the Future, Jasmine started what she called pass-on meat-goat programs to provide more than 2,500 people in surrounding villages with a sustainable source of protein and the micronutrients that come out of that protein, improve the health status of her community. At Tuskegee, I found my passion, Jasmine says. In Malawi, I was able to live it. Creative, resourceful volunteers like Jasmine have so much to contribute to communities overseas and so much to bring back to our country here in the United States. That's why we're eager to continue to build on and strengthen our partnerships with your institutions. Earlier in the year, we announced the ranking for our top volunteer-producing universities in 2014. And as some of you may know, and it's no surprise to me, frankly, 5 out of 5 of our top volunteer-producing universities, large universities, are members of APLU. 5 out of 5. The University of Wisconsin in Madison, University of Washington, University of Florida, the Ohio State University, and the University of Michigan. It's a tremendous legacy, and I hope that you believe, as I do, that our partnership is even more important in the future going forward. From Peace Corps headquarters to our regional offices across the country, we are really ramping up recruitment, especially so that we can identify the best and the brightest of the American people. And we also want to have a volunteer force that represents the rich diversity that is our country. We are a very multicultural, multidimensional country, and we really think it's important for our volunteer force to represent our nation. And so we're strengthening partnerships with organizations such as the Council of 1890 under the leadership of Dr. John Michael Lee Jr. and the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Inc., just to mention 2, to help us connect with diverse communities and introduce Peace Corps in communities where we have not been as active in recruiting. And we're spreading the word about our full slate of university partnerships, which I hope we'll cover in more detail in just a few moments on our panel. Already we count 66 APLU member universities with current Peace Corps partnership programs. And we're eager to bolster that. And I just want to mention 3 of them, and I think we're going to talk about them more in a minute, so I'm not going to go into detail. We have our Masters International program, we have our Coverdell Fellows program, and then we have a brand new Peace Corps prep program. So I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk about what these programs mean for your universities in a minute. I just want to say that in our room, I have several members of our team. Allie Snell, who's director of our Office of National and Office of Diversity and National Outreach, right there. We have Clayton Kennedy, our University Outreach Specialist. And then we have Chad Chernay and his dynamic group of Florida-based recruiters right there. And they are here and eager to talk to any of your universities, and we have a table out there, outside the door. So we've talked about the development impact of our volunteer and the great relationships that we have with universities, but I just want to close with one story that demonstrates what I think really is the most important aspect of Peace Corps service, and that is the transformative power of relationships, personal relationships. A couple months ago, I had the opportunity to meet with President Alpha Conde of Guinea, a country which sadly we had to withdraw our volunteers from just a few weeks ago. Well, in August. Anyway, prior to that, I had a meeting with President Alpha Conde when he was invited by President Obama to come to the White House. And so we had a rather formal meeting where he thanked me for the 40-plus years of Peace Corps service in his country, and I thanked him for the wonderful hospitality that his countrymen had shown to our volunteers. And then I leapt to my feet because actually his meeting with the president was due to begin in only about a half an hour. But he reached up and he touched me on the elbow, and he said, please, now that we've finished with the formalities, I want to speak to you from my heart. And this is what he said. He said, when I was a young man, I lived in a small village in central Guinea, and there was a Peace Corps volunteer who lived in the hut next to me. He is the first person I can ever remember who believed that I had a future outside the boundaries of my village. Now, he was an agroforestry volunteer, and he worked every day with the farmers. But at night, he opened his home every single evening to any students in the village who wanted to come for homework help. And I went nearly every night. He helped me with my English, he helped me with my French, he helped me with my math, he helped me with my science. When it was time for me to graduate from university, I took the West Africa University entrance exam and I passed. I was one of 4 students in my entire country and the only one from a rural area who passed that exam. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I would not have passed that exam and I would not be president today if it weren't for that Peace Corps volunteer who remains, his name is Joe, and he remains a great friend, a lifelong friend to this day. But even more important than the impact of that Peace Corps volunteer in my life is the impact of your volunteers on the lives of my people. He said, I just came off a very long campaign swing. I visited 300 villages in the course of my 6-month campaign. I went to villages way out east where my own campaign staff didn't want to go, and there were Peace Corps volunteers there. I went to villages way up in the north where it's dry and dusty. To this day, I can't get a district governor, but there are Peace Corps volunteers there. I went to villages in the central part of my country, which is where I come from. And a lot of there's a good road there, and so the NGOs are there, and they bring, they do great work. They build schools, and they have, they give food aid. They drop off bags of rice. But at the end of the day, they get back in their big white SUVs, and they drive back to Conakry. And your Peace Corps volunteers, they stay. By your presence, you demonstrate that the people of the United States stand with my people. Stand with us against discrimination, against poverty, against disparity. You demonstrate that my people are so important to your people that you're willing to send your most precious asset, your sons and your daughters, your mothers, your fathers, to live among us as we do. They speak our language, even though some of our languages aren't even written down. They eat our food, even though it makes their bellies sick. They work on our priorities, not on yours. Your being there validates my people in a way that sending them money, even building them a school, cannot accomplish. In fact, I would say that your being there has had a greater impact on my people than the millions of dollars of foreign assistance that your country sends my country every single year. My people are proud to teach you our language, our way of life, our culture. My people are proud to call you family because they know that you care about us. You give my people a hand up and not a handout, and that makes all the difference. That is the transformative power of Peace Corps. We might do great development work, and we try. We are really trying to make our development work more rigorous. But the power of Peace Corps is in the transformative relationships that are developed at the community level. Change, which comes in the words of University of Missouri Chancellor Bowen Lofton, they don't know it can't be done. They just do it. I hear the story in every single country I visit, and I visit a lot of countries. It's not always a president. Sometimes it's a mayor, a teacher, a health worker. It may have been 40 years since that person last saw their Peace Corps volunteer, and they can tell you everything about that person. It's because of the power of the relationship. And you know that. You know that one person can make a difference. You see that every day in your work. So I want to thank you for being our partners in nurturing the next generation of global leaders. I want to thank you for being thought leaders for innovation in development practice. And I want to thank you for supporting our work so that together we can transform our future. Thank you. Sorry, I went over.
Director, thank you very much for those stimulating comments, and we greatly appreciate your service on behalf of our country. Peter, you've been involved in this conversation for a long time. International engagement, globalization. In your estimation, what is the most pressing global issue that the Peace Corps and public universities should be collaborating on?
Well, that's a big issue, of course.
It is.
I think probably doubling or near doubling food production in the world between now and 2050, with its complexities of energy, water, climate change. We had the opening session of this meeting with Kathy Witecki and colleagues talking about that. Now, the Peace Corps, I think, can have an important role in all this. I think that the health efforts that the Peace Corps historically is involved in can have a really big impact. There's this old issue from the earliest days till now. To what extent is the Peace Corps volunteer a community development program versus a targeted development effort where the volunteers are part of a program to increase food production? In those early days, Shriver thought it should be a community development. And I was there not long after, actually, the Peace Corps volunteer was established, and community development was in full swing. It probably pushed the volunteers to grow more. It probably meant that the volunteers didn't impact as much to have community development. So that's an old tension. Mm-hmm. And maybe you would, I'm sure you've thought a lot about this, Kerry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think where we come out on it now is that it's more important in this day and age for us to be working in alignment with others, because our host countries all have very solid development plans that the donors and all partners have to show how they're helping to achieve national development goals. And even Peace Corps has to be able to say how the work of our volunteers is helping to achieve first village development plans, but then also national development plans. So it's just the reality of the context that we have to be more rigorous in our work, and we have to work in alignment with others, which actually today's volunteer likes. Our volunteers now are much more interested in having structure than I think of when I was a volunteer in the early 80s, and maybe when both of you were volunteers in the 60s. But today's volunteer really wants to know what kind of impact they make. They want to be able to track their impact every single day. In fact, we have apps that enable them to do just that, where they say, okay, I have a group of 15 students, and today we talked about the importance of adding green vegetables to their diet or whatever the topic of conversation was, and they will put that into their app, and that will then roll up to our volunteer reporting form.
What a different world.
It is a very different world.
When when Brady and I were volunteers, you'd go off, and in my case in Peru, you'd go off to the Andes, and you wouldn't see another American for months.
Yeah, exactly.
And you, in many cases, it wasn't just that the roads didn't go to your village, but you had to walk several miles to get back into your village. And the whole idea of having cell phones or some sort of iPads or something, just it's hard to imagine, isn't it? We didn't talk to our parents from the time we left to the time we came home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. And there's no doubt there was a big change. And Brady, what about from your perspective?
May I comment on just the ongoing conversation here, because I was in the Peace Corps early on, 1962, 64, and I was in a very structured situation because I was asked to teach in a vocational agriculture school, a boarding school, and the very rigorous nature of that program was quite different from the argument that was swirling about should it be community development, should it be structured. Now it's much more structured, I gather. But I think that doesn't take away from the principal thrust of what Peace Corps should be doing. I agree with what Peter said, that agriculture and health issues, which was part of our group. We also had English teachers and physical education teachers. We had several Olympic stars, for example, as part of the teaching program in Thailand at the time, and they've continued to make a lifetime difference in the nature of physical education and health in that country. But importantly, I think, those three original purposes of the Peace Corps are still, and I loved your presentation, they're still vibrant. They represent our citizenship abroad, provide whatever technical support we can through partnerships. The new partnerships with the various agencies and PVOs, I think, is very exciting. And then, very importantly, bring that message back to the United States, and through outreach efforts, and at the University of Missouri, we have an annual film festival, for example, that films about the Peace Corps, some made by volunteers in country, are shown to the entire community. It's a big hit. It's one of the big movements in Columbia, Missouri. And that message of interchange between our culture, the cross-cultural exchanges that occur, the implications for curriculum, the implications for research that our faculty get engaged in through consultation with Peace Corps, I still feel that is one of the most important aspects of the Peace Corps program. We're in a very brave new world today, and I think the growth in Peace Corps applications is evidence of the tremendous commitment that young people today feel, and you see that in the university. The wonderful thing about being in administration, 6 years as provost, almost 10 years as chancellor, is that every opportunity I had to talk about the Peace Corps, I could take that opportunity, and it's really made a difference, I think, in the culture of our campus.
Yeah, indeed it has. Let's open up the floor for questions that may be here. I can tell you're anxious.
Well,
Go, please.
Get up here, no
Yeah,
problem. Good morning to all of you. My name's Mark Erb. I'm at Ohio State University, and we've had a historical relationship with Peace Corps with a strategy contract position on our campus. I'm also an RPCV myself from Swaziland in 1976. But my question today is this, this historical partnership between many APLU universities and Peace Corps is through this campus Peace Corps recruiter position that's been on our office. My concern is in the restructuring of the recruitment process is that campus Peace Corps recruiter position and their responsibilities appears, from my old jaundiced perspective, and I was also a Peace Corps recruiter myself, is to have been diluted. The interviews are no longer done by the strategy contract person. That's now done through Washington. The nominations that the campus people had such a large role in playing, that's now done through Washington. I'm just wondering, when we're recruiting people to go to where the countries that we all know where they're going, can you do that from a distance? Is that going to dilute the quality? And so that's my concern.
Well, that's an excellent question, and I mean, being completely honest, we don't know. It's just, we're 3 months into it. But a couple of things. First of all, I feel like it's never been more important. The job of the campus recruiter is really going to be to recruit, to get out there and be among your students. And we found when we were analyzing the recruiter job that they were spending more than half of their time on administrative tasks, some of which were very important, others of which weren't. So we're trying to remove the administrative burden from our recruiters and allow them to do what they do best, which is representing Peace Corps on the campuses that they know very well. Now, even though it's true that the interviews are done now via Skype with Washington, and the reason for that is that there was no standard for how interviews were conducted. So we couldn't be certain that if you were interviewing in Ohio State or in Washington State or University of Georgia, that you would be judged in the same way, and you are competing against them, basically. We wanted to be sure that applicants got an absolutely fair shake, that we were able to pick, without question, we were able to pick the most qualified applicant no matter where they came from in the country, and we weren't able to do that under our previous system. So now what we do is we pool and rank all applicants nationally and draw from the top, and we could not do that before. Now, our recruiters still have a lot to say about what goes into that person's record when it goes to Washington. They still have a relationship with the applicant. And we've also done away with nominations. There are no nominations, you just get invited. Nominations just confuse people. It's sort of like our own political process. You get nominated for a job and then you finally get confirmed months later if you're lucky. So we've done away with nominations after I went through it myself. It was too hard.
And also trying to figure out ways of using technology.
Yeah, and we're using
ways that's most
technology.
efficient.
But we're evaluating it and we'll see if.
We have a question here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jim Lyons, and I'm interim president at the University of the District of Columbia. And I feel somewhat guilty about telling people that our job in Ecuador was to get people ready for the '68 Olympics. When I hear about all the real stuff that's going on, obviously. My question is, excuse me, how are you linking high school students to this whole process to get people excited about Peace Corps a little earlier? In each of my presidencies, I too have taken the opportunity to talk about the Peace Corps, and because I had the pulpit, but how do we connect? How are you attempting to get the quote pipeline in place and encourage high school students and even younger students to be thinking about the Peace Corps?
That's a great question. I don't know, you may have some. Why don't you speak first?
So Brady, you want to start?
I can share some experiences. I think what you're saying is very important. In the early days of the Peace Corps, when you first came back to the United States, you were invited to speak everywhere, in elementary schools, high schools. I think this is very, very important. And in fact, one of the most exciting times in my life was speaking to like 3rd and 4th graders. And they get very excited about the world, and so you can do wonderful things that way. We have at the University of Missouri now a Peace Corps Fellows program that brings in about 5 new graduate students per year and adds to, and part of the requirement for them being there in our graduate programs is that they work in service projects throughout the community, and that puts them in contact with a wide variety of students and linkages with various programs in the high schools and elementary schools as well. It's been very successful, and we've been able to attract very mature, very seasoned individuals, high quality into the graduate programs, but with a deep commitment to community service as well. And so having that return Peace Corps volunteer community and revitalizing it, we probably have in Columbia maybe 150 return volunteers in the community who are linked with all aspects of community life. And through the film program then that we have, we call constant attention to this global dimension of life. And that excites students, and it excites students at the elementary and graduate and the high school level, because you're really stimulating their parents as well, and you're promoting a whole different concept of the way we look at the world. And we think that has a very powerful impact.
As with most things, it's about a pipeline and making sure that you enter that pipeline as quickly as possible to have the familiarity, of course. We have another question here.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Tag Demin. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Ethiopia in 1968. That was a great talk. I mean, it kind of got me wanting to go back.
You can.
Peter may send me away.
We won't let him go.
You won't let him go. You're very important to us where you are.
Well, one of the things that goes along with the greater structure that you're giving to the Peace Corps volunteers is that our universities, particularly in the areas of agriculture, have been incredibly active in international development, and they have a whole range of different kinds of ways that they participate internationally. And within the context of those programs, Peace Corps volunteers could be very, very effective and contribute in a structured way, but also with enough freedom so they can grow. The difficulty I see is coordinating the emergence of a program and the planning for a Peace Corps volunteer. There needs to be some level of coordination. And it might be very interesting to talk about how APLU could work with the Peace Corps to create a mechanism by which that kind of coordination might occur. And so I put that on the table.
That's a great idea. Peter, do you want to say anything about that? You've got the experience of APLU and then the university and also as a volunteer.
Well, I think it's one, we'd be clearly receptive to further talks and discussions, how we can facilitate and coordinate. I think the idea of the Peace Corps becoming a professional development agency, I don't know whether you'd quite say it that far, is very interesting with a lot of implications. Implications as to who you'd recruit, as looking back on those early days. And it's interesting to note that that was during the 60s. You're right, that people, the whole feeling of the student population had some differences than today, that want apparently more structured organization. A professional development organization is pretty intriguing. Now, when I was aid administrator, we provide a few little grants, and I think they still do, for purposes of development. When
I think
Lorette Rupee was the lady who
I think you started the SPA program,
did,
which just celebrated its 25th anniversary and has been massively successful. In fact, Ian Hennessy that I spoke about just now, he received a $400 SPA grant to train his health workers, and that started that whole program.
Well, the implications of professional development organization are just enormous, if that's where you want to drive to make it. And I'm intrigued and hope that that works out. It is compatible with what people are saying here. What's the big thing we ought to achieve? I was never confident that the Peace Corps was going to achieve something coherent, except the development of Peace Corps volunteers, which was a big achievement.
Which was profound in and of itself, I'd like to just say one other thing in addition to what you're saying. I think that there are enormous opportunities through our Masters International program. So I mentioned 3 programs. Brady's already talked about our Coverdell Fellows program, which is for volunteers who return and then do graduate study. But our Masters International program is a program where applicants apply to graduate school and then they apply to Peace Corps at the same time. They conduct a year's worth of academic work on campus, and then they go overseas to apply their academic work in a field setting. They do some local research, and they continue to get academic credit for their Peace Corps service. I think that the new opportunities through our application process, where people can actually choose where they're going and what they're doing, are going to make it easier for us to align the work of the Masters International programs with the volunteer placement. And I think that in places where our Masters International program has worked well, we've had volunteers in countries where the universities also have a relationship, so they occasionally have faculty that are visiting that country. They can provide ongoing mentoring and support. Maybe they have ongoing research interests that the volunteer is tapping into. I think there's so many opportunities for doing that more easily now than ever before. The other thing is that we have really, as part of our reform effort, we've focused our Masters International programs so that now we only have MI programs in those sectors where we honestly have Peace Corps projects. We used to have Masters International programs in anything under the sun, and now it's really only in agriculture, education, public health, youth development, community economic development, and environment. So it's much more aligned. And then I just want to take a moment to talk about Peace Corps Prep, which is a brand new program. University of Missouri is one of ours. It's a brand new program, so we have 6 APLU universities. And this is for undergraduate students that in their freshman year say, yes, I'd like to have an international career, either with Peace Corps or with another agency perhaps. But it's a partnership between Peace Corps and the university. We provide some core learning objectives, and it's up to the university to develop the academic curriculum and the extracurricular activities as they see fit. But they agree to what the learning objectives are up front. And at the end of the 4 years, they not only graduate with their degree, but they also get a Peace Corps certificate, which gives them preferential treatment in terms of recruitment. It's not an automatic in because you have to satisfy all sorts of other suitability requirements and medical requirements, but you get some preferential treatment. But it also is a great training ground for any kind of international work. So I just want to put a plug in for that.
May I just add an element on that, because the Peace Corps prep program at Missouri is very, very exciting. It's capturing a lot of attention, and it's feeding the demand on the part of students generally in the state at the university to engage in a meaningful international experience. We promote study abroad. We have over 1,000 students every year that engage in study abroad. But the Peace Corps prep program, part of the experience is to place them in a service learning, and service learning is very, very big on the campus and is a partner in what we're doing with the Peace Corps program. And so these students, we have right now over 60 students engaged in very technical kind of work with healthcare, with feeding programs, with a variety of teaching techniques in Ghana and Ethiopia and many other countries of Africa and Asia, actually with some of the very low-income communities in South Korea and also in Central America. And that program has been mushrooming and has been feeding the interests of many others and captures the attention of the faculty as well.
Yeah.
So there's a two-way communications here that's just very, very important.
It's fantastic.
Well, as we approach the end of our time, I want to thank all of you very much, and particularly our audience, for being a part of this conversation, but most importantly, to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to extend this opportunity to our students. Quite frankly, they're going to serve as a foundation associated with this volunteer service and this engagement that has quite frankly been unparalleled. So thank you all very, very much. There may be a final question by anybody in the audience. Yes, way in the back. Sorry, I didn't bring the mic to you.
Yeah, my name is Pius Kamau, and I'm from Kenya. I was born and raised in Kenya. I have an organization that brings women of STEM from Africa to do their PhDs in this country.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So one of the questions I want to ask you is, how has the Peace Corps changed over the years? Has the approach, the objectives changed in any way at all, especially in Africa, number one. Number two, one of the most important things in Africa, I believe at this moment, is the study of science. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And does the Peace Corps, for example, look at that and sort of tailor its approach towards what it does in Africa to sort of fulfill some of that? And lastly, one of the most important most important things that we need to do, I think, in Africa, is to somehow encourage little girls to really be interested in science. Yeah. Because, there's a paucity and a lack of those particular disciplines in Africa, especially for girls. What can be done by the Peace Corps? And lastly, could we somehow begin thinking and sort of looking forward to a way of getting people who are retired, like my friend Tag Dement over there, to go back to Africa and take his physics, for example, that he's been taught, he has taught all his life, to go back and begin helping schools in Africa to really become efficient, proficient in physics, mathematics, and those technologies that Africa truly, truly needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a large packet of things to talk about.
Okay, we only have about 1 minute left. So let's start with the director and then Brady
Well,
and then Peter.
I'll just quickly say that our program has evolved quite significantly over the year. It's evolved as the science and as evidence has evolved. We always work at the request of the host country, and so whatever the host country requests is what we do. Education, about 45% of our volunteers, so more than 3,000 volunteers a year are doing education, and STEM is really an important part of what we've done. And just let me say, and then I'm going to turn it over, that we have, as part of this reform effort that I've just mentioned, we've done serious analysis about where we can be most effective. We've always historically worked at the secondary school level, and we have had a lot of math and science teachers as part of that. My husband was a math and science teacher as a volunteer. But we are also beginning to look at early childhood education as a place to really make a solid difference. And that's where we get to where you ended up, which is teaching young girls to love math and science and believe that they can, be successful in that area. And I really do, a lot of it is just building confidence. So it is something that we are very committed to. And then to your last point, 10% of our applicants are over the age of 50, and we treasure them, and we would welcome any of you to become Peace Corps volunteers.
Thank you. Brady?
Well, with all due respect to the emphasis on STEM, which is very important, and I think a partnership work between our universities and universities in Africa and other parts of the world, where Peace Corps training could take place on the campus is the way it used to. I trained at the University of Michigan for the summer. That leaves a lifetime kind of relationship that's important, and that could be partnered with universities abroad to be a very creative training program. But I would just emphasize what one of our early speakers in the opening session, Peter, said, and that was, let's not forget about the humanities. Curriculum change in general and capturing the role that the humanities and social sciences play in stimulating creativity among the student body is very much part of how STEM can ultimately feed society in a truly developmental way. And I think that all that should be given emphasis as well.
Great, thank you. Peter?
Well, I think that human resources are probably the biggest single demand challenge in Africa, for example. Those early days when you had volunteers teach English, despite the dedication of those folks, I wasn't sure even then that it was the best way to use volunteers. Many other ways I think may be appropriate, including at the university level, where we've had an explosion of students and nowhere near the faculty to deal with them. I do like the idea of training more students back on individual campuses. I learned to love the University of Oklahoma by my few months there at that campus, and I think it's a way to strengthen the linkages between the Peace Corps and campuses.
Great. Well, thank you so very much.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes,
just
please.
on this very topic? What we really do is we can identify potential at the community level, not in the capital cities among the wealthy and the elite, but among rural people who would otherwise be undiscovered. And as evidence of this, you probably heard of the Young African Leaders Initiative, or YALI. Now it's renamed the Nelson Mandela Leadership Initiative that the Obama administration has been promoting. 2/3 of those 500 applicants from Africa were identified by Peace Corps volunteers.
Wow.
That, I think, speaks for itself.
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please join me in recognizing members of this panel.
Thank you so much.